afternoon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is 6:30 on the nose. I like to respect time. Happy Monday, everybody. This is Dr. D here. It is great to be seen. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. It is nice and sunny here in Richmond, VA. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Demia Thomas, Dr. D. My passion is empowering urban school leaders to lead with confidence so they can transform their instructional culture and feel affirmed. And I do that by helping support the lens, the data lens that school leaders use. And there's data everywhere in the building, hard and soft data, which is what I'll be focusing on this entire week in terms of engaging with you on social media. And so, as a product of public education, I believe we have the power to change the systems that oppress our most marginalized students, right? So, we have to be, as Margaret Wheatley says, brave enough to have the conversations that matter and to start the conversations that matter. And I add on to that is that we also have to be courageous enough to create the disruption that is needed to change the current conditions that our most marginalized kids endure right now. And so the goal of What Are Your Thoughts every Monday is to connect current issues and its impact on school leadership, but also using a data lens to have the conversation, right? And so that we're developing and honing our skills with data so that we can really be the change agent that's needed for this work to move from being reactive to being more proactive in the work that we do. So let's get into it, okay? Um, I'm going to share a research article with you. This article is summer 2023, so last summer, um, and it's out of the Life Science Education Journal, and it's titled "Reflective Practices in Education: a Primer for Practitioners." And I want to talk about reflection in the way of actually how are we using engaging in reflection, one, and two, how are we using it as a piece of data in our building, right? And so the question of how we're using it is unfortunately not the way that we really should be. A lot of times we use it in ways when we are thinking about, like, at the end of the year during our evaluations as leaders, our district supervisors have us reflect on our year, looking at our data and all of the components and pillars for us for leadership. And so we reflect in that way. But that is not the best. That's checking off a list to say you've done something. And so I want to talk about how we can deeply reflect and build the muscle for reflection and use it as a source of data in the work that we do. Okay. So uh, I'm going to highlight some pieces in this article, in this research article, and show you another one that talks about reflection, just to hone in some points. And so, have you ever, like, paused during a hectic day, like it's crazy in the building? I remember all too well as a school leader. Um, what's the real purpose behind what you're doing? Like, have you stopped to say, like, why am I doing this? Right? Like, that's a really deep question that you don't typically have time during the school day to answer, right? And so reflective practice in education goes beyond just like looking in the mirror and like getting an understanding of the of like what's happening in that moment. It's a really deep dive where you have to really understand like the essence of your actions, of our actions, right? And how our actions create this ripple effect with the people that we engage with, our stakeholders. So when we're talking about changing the narrative for Black and Brown kids, we're talking about taking the time and creating the space and what that space looks like for reflection. So let's zero in on like 3 steps that, as a school leader, we can embrace to foster this culture of reflective practice, right? This and like the mindful mindset. Okay. So the steps that we're going to talk about are going to help you um, begin to put these things into practice in a more consistent. The goal here is consistency, right? Like, you can get all the advice from everybody in the world, But if you don't engage in a practice of consistency, then it's not going to work, right? So consistency is really key here. And so some of these three steps that I'm going to share with you are really based on like the researcher Dewey and Brookfield to emphasize like how you can use reflection as a form of actionable data. All right. So the two articles, let's kick things off with a working definition. So the working definition of reflection, um, according to this article, is um, the act of reflection in this context is meant to indicate a process, with Dewey highlighting the necessity of active thinking when encountering obstacles and problems. Right. So that's the textbook definition in this article here. Um, right. Because the word reflection has definitely become a buzzword. We hear it all the time, but how often do we engage in it? And are we engaging in it in the way that's really meaningful? So the in layman's terms, like the reflection definition from this article is it a reflection really entails considering past or present experiences, right? And learning from the outcomes from either one of from past or present experiences, right? So what are the outcomes that have been observed? What can you learn from those outcomes? And then planning, right? Planning how to be better, how to approach the similar situation in the future. What can you do to be like to approach that situation in a more strategic and meaningful way that has um, a positive impact on you and your stakeholders, right? And so it's not just thinking about what's happened; it's thinking about it, looking at the outcomes, and then planning, like how you will address those things moving forward. And so perhaps the best place to begin when discussing reflective practices is like asking a question like, why do people do it? Right? It's common to like conceptualize reflection about teaching situations in a way that help fix a problem or issues. But this can also be counterproductive, right? This article talks about how the way we understand reflection right here is coming to like it's counterproductive because um, counterproductive to the overarching goal of reflective practices to continually improve one's own efficacy and abilities as an educator, right? Similar to how there's always a new, more effective invention to be made, there's always room for improvement, even by the most experienced and well loved educators. Okay. The article goes on to talk about how our current understanding and definition of reflection can be counterproductive in a lot of ways. Hey, Dr. Rowe, thanks for hopping on. Um, and so I want to talk about like how we can shift our thinking based on the data provided in this article, and I will provide the links for both articles so that you have an opportunity to read them on your own time. Um, but uh, want to talk about like some strategies that you can actually use to help in terms of how to reflect systematically, right? Like everything is about a system because as you are working on these systems, each and every step that you take toward these systems, the compound effect happens, right? You're building momentum, you're getting better at it, and it becomes second nature. So, this act of reflection should become as natural for us as brushing our teeth. But we have to start with intentional actions in order for that to become like just a natural occurrence, right? Um, and so this reflecting systematically, it what it does is it allows us to identify patterns, to identify trends, right? And areas for improvement. So incorporating reflection as a regular practice can help transform into rich qualitative data. Ding, 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 ding. Data is the name of the game. That is it. If we are not capturing data on everything that we're doing as a school leader, we need to shift and refocus. The act of reflecting is a source of qualitative data. Okay. So the ability to be introspective helps you gain valuable insight on your leadership style and how your school is operating, like the dynamics of your school. Okay. So when we, in light of this, right, feedback becomes a very critical layer of actionable data, right? That actionable data, that feedback is actually offering perspectives to us as leaders that may not have been like emerged through like traditional data collection methods because it's qualitative. So we have to approach it in a different way. This requires intention. So this kind of feedback, like this reflective practice and this feedback, this actionable data, it can ground you in the realities of like who we are serving, our most marginalized students, right? And ensuring that mindfulness is in action because that is a part that, according to research in this article here, um, research outreach, this was written in 2020, talks about how our core qualities, and this is very similar to my changing the narrative framework in terms of your core values being here and how they become actions in what you do. And so this is very similar to that framework. And what they talk about is this mindfulness, right? Like it's good to be reflective. It's good to identify the patterns, but then what do you do in terms of when you're planning like how to shift? You have to be mindful in that moment of what it is you are doing and saying, right? To make sure that you are acting differently and behaving differently, to create a different outcome because you weren't satisfied or happy with the outcome before. So let's get into it because I wanted to show you some of these articles. Like I said, I will put them in the comments once we are done here. But I also wanted to get into the 3 actionable steps that you can do, that you can take, right? So, um, the 3 actionable steps that you can take, um, practice that you can use as a reflection, as a mindful data collection practice, right? 1, establish a routine for thoughtful reflection. So let's be clear, reflection isn't just about for when performance reviews are looming, right? Why not carve out time, specific time each week for quiet reflection? So this isn't about critiquing every decision through the lens of an evaluation either, right? Because we're so trained in that way as leaders that we're always looking at how is this going to affect our evaluation, but it don't we have to practice getting out of that lens, right? But rather engaging in a thoughtful contemplation about our practice, right? The hurdles that we had to come, the successes that we have. A lot of times we are so focused on the fires that we have to put out that we don't stop to look at the successes, no matter how small. So reflect on why, right? And when uh, in my change change the narrative framework, the very first phase in the change the narrative framework is mind the gap, and there's a gap between why you do what you do and your actions, right? So this connection to value aligned leading, which is absolutely critical. You have to keep asking yourself why behind your actions and the outcomes. Like, why did that happen? Why did, our attendance drop, right? Why did our attendance increase? Again, reflection should happen for both outcomes, not just the negative. Because a lot of times, and I've been sucked into this too, is I only sit down and think about like what went wrong. But a lot of times we have to think about what went right so that we can replicate that, right? And so view this as like a pivotal part of our professional upkeep, right? A no judgment zone to be like just a zone to deeply understand your impact. So that was 1. Establish a routine for thoughtful reflection. It could be once a week for now. It should happen every day, but it could be once a week at minimum. Because once a month, you can't. I can't. I don't know about y'all, but I can't remember what I did 2 weeks ago. So once a month, it's just it. It doesn't. It's not going to be fruitful. But once a week, even if you do it on a Friday, you think about what your week is like, or a quiet Sunday to think about what your week was like, Sunday morning. But establish a routine for thoughtful reflection for you as a leader. Quiet reflection. Number two, foster an environment that where you can receive genuine feedback. So feedback is actually John Hattie's, like in his meta-analysis, is a very high indicator of um, teacher success or student success, right? But feedback is for us as leaders, it's the same thing. Feedback serves as our guide, right? It's about embracing honest, constructive insight from our team, from our students, from our community, not just affirmations, right? So consider implementing some mechanisms for collecting anonymous feedback because if their name's attached, they may not be honest but out of fear. So make it anonymous in some way, right? Or engaging in an open discussion where you actually cultivate a culture of trust and transparency. And the beautiful thing about this open discussion piece is this is where you as a leader get to model how to be vulnerable. And the minute you do that, I guarantee you, I bet my life on it. When it, it helps them connect with you automatically. Like, I can't believe Principal so and so was able to, be so honest. Like, I remember one time in a staff meeting as the principal, I was sharing, we were going over data, and I was sharing about how, um, you know, I was those kids that we are failing right now because I grew up in a poor neighborhood, food stamps, all that kind of stuff. Um, and so that's my reason why this sense of urgency that I have with this work is really critical and helping them connect to the data. And one of the teachers who gave me the most pushback as a principal, as a new principal, she said to me, Miss Thomas, I never knew that about you. She said, you need to share that. You need to share that more often because that changed how I see you. And when she said that, it hit me in that moment like all the things that I was trained as a child to be like, what happens in the house stays in the house. You don't tell people your business. You know how it goes. Those are the things that actually make people connect to you because it's who you are. You're not making up a story, right? And so when you're having these, um, creating these environments where you are cultivating this culture of trust and transparency, these are opportunities where you can really be vulnerable with your staff to help, like, speed up that trust and transparency. So feedback is a dialogue, right? It's a chance to see through various lenses and to leverage these insights for growth, because that's what it's about. So if you're looking at this afterwards, share some thoughts, or if you have any questions or any experiences that you would like to share in terms of, how you have created a culture of trust and transparency where you create time for reflection and to receive feedback. Okay, share that in the chat. That's right. Transformation will not take place without transparency. Absolutely. Absolutely. The third thing is promoting like have a reflective journal and a collection of reflections because this is where the data comes in. Ding, 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 ding. I'm always going to talk about data, right? Data moves everything, but you have to connect it to the qualitative data so that you can actually show and discuss how those two pieces are connected. So, reflective journaling offers a really private haven for your thoughts, right? Your feelings and any observations that you have. So, encourage your staff to keep personal reflection journals and initiate a blog to share reflections, right? You can hold regular group reflection sessions where everyone can openly share their experiences, their learning moments, any strategies that they have had for future like for future challenges. So these practices will nurture individual growth in staff and strengthen your team's collective capacity for reflective practice. But you, as the leader, have to create that space. You have to create that space and the time, because in a school building, everything's moving 10 million miles a second. So you're probably asking, like, well, where in the world am I going to find the time to do this? Once a month at your staff meetings, you are using that time for reflection. You're providing your staff with the journals. You are actually walking the talk and journaling with them, right? You're giving them time to reflect and write and share out if they want to. One of the practices that we used to do at my school, my director of climate and culture, we were a restorative practice school. And so she would have us, Bahari Makini, hi Makini, would have us sitting in a circle, because when you're sitting in a circle, it creates a feeling of togetherness, of one, of trust. And so when you are, for that, say for example, that once a month where you give them time to reflect on their week, reflect on their month, reflect on the impact that they've had on children, right? And I want to put a pin in this because this is so critical. Because in the work that I do working with school leaders and the conferences that I go and I present at, what I'm hearing the most from school leaders is that there is a lack of commitment from their staff about this work. And immediately when I hear that, my question for them is, so what have you done in light of that? What actions have you taken in light of that? Or it may be depending on how they presented it, how do you know that there's a lack of commitment? What has been said or done that makes you feel like there's a lack of commitment? Taking the time to create safe spaces where your staff feel like they're heard, where they can give you meaningful feedback and you actually listen and make the changes as needed, is so critical to establish commitment. I was at a conference in Virginia, the Virginia Alliance of Black School Educators, and Dr. Lavelle Brown, who is a superintendent in Ithaca City, actually 13 years, and he's from Virginia, but he's been a superintendent there. He presented, and it blew me away because so much he talked about how in all of the years we haven't done any better by Black and Brown kids. We've done a little better, but we haven't done better in the way that we need to. With all of these changes, all the research, all the shifts that are happening, right? We haven't done better. And what he mentioned is, like, we have he showed a list of like the terms that we use that are causing more harm than good. And I'm guilty of this too. That's this phrase sense of urgency. And a lot of times we hear this phrase sense of urgency like we have to move at a rapid pace. We got work to do. Like I have said that so many times, and I hear school leaders say it a lot too. But when Dr. Brown mentioned like this shift in thinking about we're moving so fast, right? The sense of urgency that is creating a gap in how we are connecting with people, right? Because we got to do this. What's the data say here? We have to do, what's the data say here? Now we have to pivot this way. What's the data say here? What's the new research say? We have to do this. And so we're not connecting with people. So the gap is getting wider and wider. But if we slow down and take the time to reflect on our practice and our impact and why we do the work we do, why? Exactly, Dr. Rowe. Why do we do the work that we do? Why are you passionate and committed to the kids that you teach every day? Why are you passionate about leading that school, that turnaround school that nobody else wants to lead? But you said you want that school. Why? Why are those staff there? The opportunity for reflection is so important for us to reconnect to why we're here. It is absolutely necessary, right? And so when Dr. Brown talked about that, it clicked. It was like, damn, that just makes so much sense to just slow down. And then I reflected on my experiences as a school leader, and every single connection I made, every time we made huge progress in the work that we did, it was because of the relationships I had developed with staff in the community. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. We have to slow down and reconnect to our staff. Now, I'm not saying ignore the data. You know, I'm not going to say that, right? Your data and your connection should go hand in hand. That you don't do one or the other. You're working both of those at the same time. So when you're using these steps, right, like journaling, sharing reflections, taking time to reflect for yourself, getting feedback from your staff and talking about it, letting them know that you've heard them. Like 9 times out of 10, all staff want to do is be heard. They need time to reflect on their week. They need time to reflect on their practice because we throw so many things at them. It's like at a spades table. Ding, you know how you throw that card and it just spins around, right? We're not playing a game, but that's how we move in education. We're just moving so fast. We just pick that card up. What's the next deck? What you got in your hand? What we're gonna do? Let's. No, we're not getting books. We are shifting Black and Brown children's lives. That means that we have to slow down and connect. We know that statistically, Black and Brown teachers are short. We have a shortage of Black and Brown teachers, right? So that means our non Black and Brown teachers, we need to connect to, we need to connect with. We need to figure out, like, why are you here? Why did you decide to come to this school in this neighborhood with these kids? Like, get to the heart of the matter. And the only way you can do that is through reflection and carving out a safe space, cultivating a culture of trust and transparency. And that includes using the data, right? So, through journaling, shared reflections, mindfulness, you're cultivating what like through those things, it cultivates a consistent practice, right? It's not just a one and done, because a lot of times at the beginning of the school year, we have this whole what's our vision and mission? What are we going to do? But then we don't talk about it again. But if you dedicate one meeting a month for reflective practice, one of your staff meetings, one of your collab meetings a month for reflective practice, it will make a difference in how your staff engage with one another, and it will make a difference in the impact that they have on students because they will reconnect to their why, right? For us as leaders, it has to be consistent, right? We have to constant like putting those systems in place and those times and mechanisms in place has to happen on a consistent basis. We have to constantly encourage a state of active, open attention to the present, the here and now. Not what happened last week or in the past, like a year ago with Bobby or Bobby Brown. No, the present. And when shared, reflection will foster a community of practice, which we know data shows is the most effective way for adults to have an impact. So when we enhance the collective wisdom of our team and promote a culture where mindfulness and reflective action drive continuous improvement, the feeling, the change in the culture is palpable, right? So embracing this reflective approach with the determination, like to lead with insight and compassion and purpose, is why reflection is so critical, right? Why carving out times and creating systems is so critical. So I just want to review, just to recap. There are 3 ways to begin these actionable steps towards practice. And I want to know in the comments, which one do you commit to, right? Which one? That doesn't have to happen in order. You can pick any one of them, but you have to commit to it from now to the end of the school year and develop that practice, develop that muscle. So the first thing is establish a routine for thoughtful reflection. That's for you. It should be every week. Write it down. What was the impact you had? Reflect on your why, right? A specific time each week dedicated to quiet reflection. Put it on your calendar. Turn your phone on do not disturb. Okay? That's for you. Two, foster an environment of open feedback. Create some mechanisms where you can collect data from your community, parents, staff, everybody, custodian, cafeteria worker, everybody in your school community. Make it anonymous because the goal is for you to become a better leader and to see how your work is manifesting through your stakeholders' lenses, like to look at the different lenses that are happening, that are there, exist in your school community, and act on that, right? Don't take it personal because the feedback that they're giving is their truth. So don't take it personal. We don't have time for personal education. We give it time for like for those personal emotions as an attack. Don't take it personal. So the second thing is like collecting feedback, and don't wait for the end of the school year when the district gives the climate survey. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about creating something that's anonymous that you can collect before the district does, so that you can actually do something. You would need to do that within the month of April. Get in the practice of it, and it doesn't have to be long. It could be 10 questions, right? The third thing that you can do is promote reflective journaling and collective reflections. Okay. This is a really good time to do this toward, because some of us are toward the end of the school year, right? Like in Richmond, May 31st is the last day of school. So you can begin this practice now to think about like posing the question to staff around, how do you think this school year went? What are some changes that you can like that you would like to see in terms of my leadership? Remember, this is about your practice. This is about you. Okay. What would you like to see differently? What are some things that worked well? What would you like me to see me start doing? What would you like to see me stop doing? What would you like to see me continue doing? Right? That's a protocol. Stop, start, continue. But this is all about you. Okay? Creating the time and space where you are carving out time where everyone has an opportunity to reflect and share. Because if they reflect and don't share, they don't have to share. But you definitely have to share to model for them and create that safe space. So, out of those three things, your individual reflection, getting anonymous feedback, or promoting reflective journaling, walking the talk, which one are you going to do for the month of April? Think about that. Okay. Think about that and think about how um, you can engage in this and what systems you can put in place for this. And if you need some help or support with that, reach out to me, send me a message, and I would love to have a conversation with you around like what that looks like and what systems can be put in place for that. Because I'm telling you, connecting and reflecting is where the movement is. It's where the impact, you will see the most impact in the work that you're doing. Okay. So drop some comments. Let me know your thoughts. What are your thoughts? And I will put the article links in the comments below. And remember, it's about making those incremental changes that add up to the monumental shifts in your school culture. You are collecting this data, right? And keep going. Don't stop. Our babies need you. So keep going and have a fantastic week. I'll see you next Monday.